Hey, I'm ZSH Plays. Welcome to Jurassic World Northwest, where today, as you can see, we're building an enormous, realistic Cretaceous cruise. Let's go. We have so much to build and to see today that there's no time for any shots of research at the beginning. We're going to get straight into building an enormous lake for the Cretaceous cruise and a couple of islands. This cruise is going to feature 7 different dinosaurs, and for 5 of those there will be no visible barriers between the dinosaurs and the guests on the cruise. That is a big lake, and there's a reason for that. I don't want this Cretaceous cruise to be a kind of traditional river cruise. I'll tell you what all the dinosaurs are going to be in a minute, but if we just take a look at this first island, this is not only going to have dinosaurs on it, it's also going to block the view to the far side of the shoreline, because we're going to have a habitat there for Spinosaurus, and I don't want the guests to see this massive predator until they get to that part of the lake. I think that would make it more exciting. The island isn't just here to block the view, it's also going to be the home to a Margosaurus. So as usual, I've measured this out with the smallest amount of land that we can have that they'll still be happy. And as well as placing loads of conifers across the back to block the view of the Spinosaurus, we'll also fill it with all the plants that they need to eat. And then on the next island is where Ornithomimids is going to live. I think this is the best looking of the Ornithomimids in the game. I don't think I've ever used them before, so I'm really excited to see them. And then we're going to have some much bigger dinosaurs living around the shores of the lake, and the cruise will pass by all of those, and that's where the hidden barriers come in. But before we get to the hidden barriers, we've got a barrier that is very much not going to be hidden, and that is for the Spinosaurus. I love the classic Jurassic Park 3 fence, so that's what we're going to be using here. I think the scarier looking the fence, the scarier looking the dinosaurs, so very happy to use that. I want to give a quick shout out to EvolutionSquare as well. The technique I'm using here, something that she spoke about recently, where you place down shallow water, put the fence on it, and then you can then replace almost all of the shallow water with deep water so that the fence appears to be sitting in the deep water, which is really useful. I want the fence as well as the Spinosaur to be hidden from view until the guests get to this part of the lake. So as well as covering the ground with as many trees as we can get in, including some separate trees and some sunken trees to use as bushes, those and this island mean that the fence can't be seen at all, which is perfect. We do have one very important bit of research to do today, and that is to unlock the extra attractions so we can actually put the Cretaceous cruise in. So let's do that and then build the cruise. This building is the Jungle River Cruise from the Jurassic Park concept art that I built back in early access, and as pleased as I was with it back then, I think it could be improved, and I want to use this as the basis to create a new Cretaceous cruise experience. We'll start by laying out the routes for the ride, and then we're going to make some big improvements to that building and build some new stuff to set the scene for the guests and get them into their kayaks. This route is pretty rough at the moment. It's going to take in all of the main areas that I want our guests to get to, and then as we build the habitats, we will modify it and get them as close as possible to all the dinosaurs. There we go, and that's the basic route. Let's start building. The first thing I want to do is bring the existing Cretaceous cruise building and the new area that we're creating together so it's all seamless. And speaking about the area, I should probably say where we are. So we are right at the northern end of Jurassic World Northwest here. This is the end of the park, as well as the end of the Cretaceous area, although we still have a few habitats left to build in the area. So after making a new ramp to get the guests up to the Cretaceous cruise building, we're going to make this big concrete area look more realistic by using decals to create gaps in the concrete so it looks like concrete slabs rather than one perfect sheet of concrete. And then what I want to do is make the entrance to the Cretaceous cruise building feel like a queue. This is essentially a ride, so just like in a theme park, what we need is a queue line for the guests by adding an awning over the path that goes into the building, and later on we're going to add some TV screens for them to watch while they're waiting and things like that. We can make this feel much more like the entrance to a theme park ride than just a little kind of hut sat in the water. I thought I'd show you this technique as well because it's something that took me a long time to get my head around. How to make one flat panel into a ramp and make these sides work. So basically you just copy the panel next to itself and rotate it on these axes and then sink it down, and you get a 3-dimensional ramp rather than a 2-dimensional ramp, which looks much better. And we're going to move on and do some signage, quite similar to what we did in with the Raptors last week. This is actually based on a real sign though, which I just saw. It's the River Adventure, which is a ride at one of the Universal theme parks. I forget which one it might be in Japan. I really like the way it looked, so we're going to make something a bit similar to that. These standing stones are so useful. We've used them a few times in the park now. We're going to use them here once we've coloured them to match these rocks, just to make it a bit spikier and a bit cooler looking, and more closely match the reference image I was looking at in the park in Japan. We'll just copy a few of those across till we get the shape that we want, and then we can make the Cretaceous Cruise logo. So the Cretaceous Cruise sign in the game only goes so big and not big enough for what we want. So what I'm going to do is just make our own here. and then as usual copy it behind itself and change the color so we get a better look to it. We're going to drop in one of the Jurassic Park themed boats as well. Created these back in our Building Jurassic Park series, and I'm still happy with them. Mainly made out of portable toilets, obviously. So we can hide those into the rock there. That'll look really good. We'll just add a few extra rocks to cover up the bottom of the toilets. I designed this to actually have guests in it for our Avery and Jurassic Park. So when I hit play in this park, it immediately filled with guests, which was not the effect that I wanted. So I've switched those benches out for the empty benches to prevent that from happening. And then we're going to add the star of the show, Spinosaurus, to it as well, and just modify the rock work so he's got something to stand on. We'll add a few plants in as well for interest, and that's the sign done. I'm also going to add in a viewing tree. I guess not everyone is going to want to or be physically able to do a kayak tour around this enormous lake, and we want them to be able to see things as well. So we'll have the big viewing tree there, give them a view across the lake. And we're going to make some TV screens. I can't believe we don't have any TV screens in the game, but I've managed to put one together using a couple of door panels, a couple of posters from the Wetlands pack, and then a gantry piece and light. And they look pretty good in that queue line. There we go, that's starting to come together. I've added even more lights and signage to really sell the idea that this is a queue line. We'll take a look at the whole thing at the end of the video, but now it's time to go and grab a lot of dino DNA. And while our expedition team are grabbing a load of new dinos for us, we're going to go back to the cruise itself and finish that off. So with these islands, we'd need a way for the staff to get there and back. So we're going to use some of our boats again and some of the piers from the Wetland pack with a few modifications on both the islands. I love little touches like that where it looks like it would actually work IRL. There we go. That's the staff access for the Amargasaurus island. And here is the staff access for the Ornithomimus. I'm just going to go in and do a little bit more terrain work on these islands to get a bit of variation in there and a bit more height at the back so they look more interesting, a little bit of terrain painting, and then we'll get on to our hidden barriers. So this is a technique that they use in zoos sometimes. All you need is a simple concrete wall that is hidden under the water. So the top of the concrete wall is just below the waterline, so it can't be seen. And the bottom of the concrete wall goes all the way down to the bottom of the water. And as long as the animal or dinosaur that you're containing doesn't combine being able to swim with having forearms strong enough to drag themselves over the wall, and as long as the water is deep enough that they can't just step over the wall, then you can safely secure them in the habitat without having any visible barriers. You can see from the obstructions heat map here that even dinosaurs as big as what we're going to have in here, and we're going to have two of the biggest animals ever to have existed on this planet, Dreadnoughtus and Patagotitan, are unable to get past this barrier. This one hidden wall will be sufficient to give our guests the classic Cretaceous Cruise experience without them being horribly squished by the biggest dinosaurs ever to have existed. There is another dinosaur in this lake though that does combine being able to swim with having powerful forearms, and that is everyone's favourite giant duck, Deinocheirus. So they're going to have a fence similar to the Spinosaurus but less scary looking. And then we can move on to our final inhabitants, Patagotitan. A modified version of the wall from Dreadnoughtus will keep those in, and they're going to share their habitat with some Hypsilophodons as well. And that is all the barriers done. Now we just need to get these habitats looking good and suitable for the dinosaurs. I'm adding a smaller island onto the lake just for looks, and then we'll get on to Patagotitan. We'll roughen up the terrain and then raise it at the back as usual to make sure the visibility is good, and then we're going to go in with loads of different terrain paint to make this pretty sizable habitat look interesting, different bushes and shrubs and trees, just to make sure we don't have any big stretches of plain green everywhere. And if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit the like button and make sure you subscribe if you're new to the channel so you can get notified of the future episodes. I thought I'd show you this as well. These are all the substations we need to power all these fences. And what I always do is just use one of the rock terrain brushes to draw in little roads or paths between them. So it looks like the staff would be able to drive to each of these when they needed to. Completely unnecessary, but I think it really helps make the park look more realistic. We just got one more thing to do in the stretch of the lake after the Spinosaurus. I don't want to put a habitat in here because keeping a load of herbivores next to one of the largest predators that ever lived is not going to be good for them. So we're just going to put a massive slab of rockwork in there for interest. And that is the Cretaceous Cruise built. It's time to start getting the dinosaurs in here and making sure that it works. We're going to start with Amargasaurus, and for once we're going to be airlifting them directly into the habitat because, well, they're going to be living on an island and we could hardly drive them in there. Let's head over to the island now. This is where they're going to be landing, and as you can see there are no barriers at all on this island, so I am really relying on Amargasaurus not being a swimmer. I've got absolutely no idea, but we'll check the heat map, and there we go. They can't get out. Excellent. Let's move on to Ornithomimus. Such an amazing animal. They'll be on the other island. Again, no barriers. Again, praying that they can't swim. And again, they can't, so this is working really nicely. Unless I've missed it, there's no way to know whether a dinosaur can swim or not until you actually put them into a habitat, so really relying on luck here. And so far it's holding. That's the Ornithomimus done. Time for the sauropods. Here's Dreadnoughtus. These guys should be okay according to the heat map. It already says it's blocked for giant dinosaurs. We can see from their range here that that hidden wall does work, so that's great. We'll get Patagotitan in as well, looking majestic. And then it's time for the duck. I've gone with some bold stripes for the male and then none for the female, so we can get some distinctive sexual dimorphism there. They'll be behind a fence, as will, for obvious reasons, this guy. And then over in our hatchery, our spare Hypsilophodons who've been living in a giant holding pen since episode 1, finally going to get a habitat of their own, or one to share with Patagotitan anyway. And at last we've got all the dinosaurs in, and we can check out the Cretaceous Cruise. Well, here we are at the entrance. I think the Spinosaurus skeleton does a really good job of getting people excited to get into their kayak. I think the area hangs together really nicely with all the improvements we've made to the original Cretaceous Cruise blueprint. Loads more details here, but enough of the entrance, let's get onto the kayak. Now this is the view that I wanted to see. The last Cretaceous Cruise that we built was all about a river overgrown with foliage, you're completely pressed in by trees on both sides. This one, I wanted it to be expansive, and just look at that view. I think this would be an awesome place to go for a paddle, even if there weren't any dinosaurs in it, but obviously it is going to be significantly improved by the dinosaurs. And we're coming up on the first ones now, the Amargasaurus. I'm so glad they brought these back into the game. They're such a cool dinosaur. So the route for the kayaks winds its way from the beginning of the tour round to this island, gets you really close to the shoreline, and then curves along so you get an amazing view of the dinosaurs. I've been able to squeeze nests into most of these habitats as well, so there'll be babies on this tour once the park is complete. We've got one of our Dreadnoughtus waking up here, so let's leave the Amargasaurus and wind our way around to their part of the shoreline. You can just see the pier for the Ornithomimus island there, which is where we'll be going next, but first we're going to check out Dreadnoughtus. This tour, by the way, is pretty epic. The whole route takes 28 minutes to go around, which is pretty long for a Cretaceous cruise, but I feel like this would be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I'd very happily use up half an hour to do that, and the hidden barriers work so well. These aerial shots are the only place that you can actually see this wall. It's completely hidden as you kayak past it. It looks exactly like the Cretaceous cruise scene from Jurassic World, without the whole having a tiny kayak next to an animal the size of an apartment building, which looks really cool on screen, but I imagine would not end well. Here's the Ornithomimus. I've given the male red neck feathers to separate them from the females. I think that works really nicely. Probably could have made this island a bit bigger, although I guess we'll never know how intelligent Ornithomimus actually was, how much space they'd really need to be happy, but the game says they're happy, so that'll do me. Get a better view of the pier and the boat there, and we're almost at the Deinocheirus. Got a fence for these guys, as you saw, so the view's not quite as good as the other animals, but no way to keep these guys in with a hidden wall. They'd simply just swim up to it and climb over it. And as cute as they are, I'm not sure you'd want to ride your kayak right past one. Really pleased we did all that terrain painting earlier. This habitat's only simple, but I think it looks really effective, and the way the land kind of melds into the water with the reeds as well looks very natural. You can get pretty close to them in the kayak. Could maybe get this a tiny bit closer to the fence than it is looking at this. But obviously you don't want to be close enough to be able to get your hands through or anything like that. Next up is probably my favourite of the sauropods, Patagotitan. Just such a magnificent animal. You can see them clearly when you first start the tour, they're that big. And it's great to see our little Hypsilophodons from episode 1 finally having somewhere proper to live. My only disappointment in this build is that I watched it for a very long time and none of the dinosaurs ever actually went right into the water. They drink from it, but they never walk through it. I've got a feeling that they're programmed so that they will only go through water if they're trying to get to something on the other side, rather than just going into it for the pleasure of it. So it's a shame that they don't get right into the water next to the kayaks. Although if you know of a way I could persuade them to do that without having them actually cross the kayak route, which obviously we don't want, then let me know in the comments. Not right now though, because we're approaching the Spinosaur paddock. It would be so cool to just be quietly paddling up to these big spiky fences, and then suddenly a Spinosaurus appears. The only thing that could make this a more perfect scene for me would be if we could get rid of these lights on the water. It looks a lot better from the Spinosaurus side. And we've got 2 in here, along with a nest as well. So we'll see a baby Spinosaurus soon, hopefully. Don't think I've seen the baby Spinos in this game yet. And that's the last dinosaur on the tour. As we come round this corner here, you can see the backside of the Amargasaurus Island and the Dreadnoughtus away in the mist in the distance, which looks absolutely amazing. Love that. We've got the treetop viewing here as well. Just take a quick look at the view from there. Pretty nice. And that is the Cretaceous Cruise. I really hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you next week for some more Jurassic World Evolution 3.